Today's gospel, we hear how Jesus returns to his hometown to preach and to perform miracles. However, to his great surprise, he's not welcomed in this familiar place. Instead, he's criticized, envied, and rejected by those who know him. They cannot understand how God is using him to preach with such clarity, such wisdom, when he's so new at this work. He's only been a year or two in his public ministry. We hear how the Pharisees and the synagogue leaders are jealous of the many good deeds and the miracles that Jesus has performed. But even among such persecution and petty squabbling, Jesus teaches us what we should do when faced with such a situation. Jesus continues to preach the good news and continued to work miracles among those who were open to hearing his message and those that did not discriminate against his inexperience or his local connections. We hear how Jesus even healed a few people, cured them by laying his hands upon them as he left that town. He left there, quote, amazed at their unbelief. So he went to another place to teach, where the leaders would have greater faith, where they would accept him, and there wouldn't be jealousy or envy in their hearts at his very presence. I'd like to focus on this lesson since it's such a common one in our lives, maybe happening in our workplaces or among families even. The lesson from today, when faced with such a similar situation in our lives, is that we must persevere. We must persevere and never lose hope when we are doing what is right. So often when we stand up for our faith, maybe for an issue in society, maybe at the workplace, and begin to do great things, it's almost inevitable that persecution, envy, and jealousy will come our way, often from the people around us that we're not expecting, maybe a coworker or a family member. We may be shocked that those closest to us, that their response, because naturally you'd expect them to encourage or support from our peers or family members, but sadly this isn't always the case. Human pride often gets in the way, pride which is the root of all sin. Remember, for Satan, he was prideful, he was jealous and envious of God, and that led to his fall from heaven. Adam and Eve thought that eating the apple would make them like God. Again, pride, and they were exiled from Eden. So we can see if we fall into the sin of pride, envy, or jealousy, the consequences are never that good. In the gospel, it was the leaders of the synagogue and those more senior to Jesus who questioned this young man in his 30s. The teachers were the ones who discounted Jesus' wisdom. They took offense at his good deeds. Their pride was wounded by his very presence. They were intimidated that this young carpenter's son could preach with such wisdom, boldness, authority, attracting large crowds, or how he was able to work such miracles by his loving presence or his healing touch. We then hear how Jesus again was amazed at their unbelief and their response to him, especially his peers in his hometown. Weren't they the ones to support him the most? Instead, those closest to him were the ones to persecute and betray him. Just look at Judas, one of his own 12. You and I have probably experienced something similar to this at one time in our life. Maybe we're even going through it now, be it in a job, among family members. As soon as we began to flourish in our natural talents and abilities that God has given us, sure enough, pride, jealousy, and envy creeps in. Instead of encouragement and support, we're faced with persecution, maybe the lack of belief of what God was doing in your life. Sometimes it may come from the jealousy of a brother or sister, maybe receiving the praise of a parent that sparks this jealousy or envy among siblings, maybe from a prideful boss or a work colleague who feels their authority is being threatened. These experiences can be painful, burdensome, difficult to endure. We feel maybe betrayed or unappreciated by those closest to us, those we'd expect to be happy for our success. It's in these painful moments, these frustrating times, that we can ask ourselves the question that John put outside on the board there. What would Jesus do? What would Jesus do in such a situation? And thankfully, in today's gospel, we see what Jesus would do. He's faced with a very similar situation. Notice he doesn't return a wrong with another wrong. Jesus continues to do what is right. He continues to preach the good news. He continues to work miracles in the lives of those who believe in him, who approach him, and he flourishes in his ministry wherever he goes. And then, when his work was complete there, he moved to the next village, continuing following the Holy Spirit wherever he was led. Jesus didn't let the obstacles, barriers, anything slow him down. He was on a mission from God. No persecution, no jealousy, no envy, no peer, no authority, no betrayal was going to stop him from accomplishing his mission to spread the good news of the gospel, to die on the cross and then to be raised again 3 days later. Similarly, if we are ever faced with a difficult persecution, maybe an injustice in our life, we need to remember the Beatitudes. There's a powerful line in the Beatitudes. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Consoling words. Jesus was the stone which the builders rejected, and now has become the cornerstone. Jesus is our hope, our salvation, our rock, our fortress, our shield. He is our refuge in times of need. I think St. Paul deserves the final word. The last phrase in today's second reading says, when I am weak, that is when I am strong. When I am weak, that is when I am strong. Paul says this because he realizes in difficult times, through everything that he faced, through the persecution and the difficulties that he faced, when he was weak, he realized that it was God carrying him through it all, inspiring him, guiding him, leading him where he had to go, giving him the strength to do so. So he was always following those words of realizing that when he is weak, when he feels beaten down, difficult times, people around him may not encourage him, there may be sibling rivalry or whatever it may be, that when he is weak, that he is strong, because the Lord is the one carrying him. And Paul could only do this when he approached the Lord with these words, "Here I am, Lord, I come to do your will."